Your father is dead. He died alone in a motel, and I am the one who buried him because nobody else knew he existed. She had been walking in the rain for 40 minutes, 14 hours on her feet. Rent 11 days late, no jacket, no signal, no one coming. And now a stranger in a black car was telling her the man who abandoned her 20 years ago had a whole secret life, and somehow that secret life had just become hers. She didn't get in because she trusted him. She got in because her knees finally gave out, and because the look on his face told her he already knew things about her that she hadn't told anyone alive. If this story already has you hooked, subscribe right now, follow every single part to the very end, and drop a comment telling me what city you are watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Your father is dead. He said it through the rain through the open window of a car that cost more than Emily Carter had earned in the last 3 years combined, and he said it the way a person says something they have rehearsed, not to be cruel, but because they know there is no soft entrance to that particular room. Emily stopped walking. She had been moving for 40 minutes through the worst storm the city had seen in October. Her sneakers waterlogged her waitress apron, soaked flat against her legs, her body running on nothing but stubbornness. In the particular fury of a woman who had been left behind so many times she'd stopped keeping count. She had told herself 12 more minutes. 12 more minutes to the hotel clock, in change in the locker room, survive until 6 a.m. She was good at that math. She had been doing it since she was 8 years old, and now she was standing still in the rain. He died alone, the man continued from inside the car, in a motel outside of Davenport, Iowa. And I am the one who arranged his burial because nobody else knew he existed. Emily turned around slowly. The man in the back seat was watching her with complete stillness. Dark suit, hands folded in his lap, face like something carved out of a decision. He was not young and he was not performing patience. He simply had it the way people have things they were born into, like money, like power, like the ability to sit dry in a car and watch a woman fall apart in the rain without flinching. "Who are you?" she asked. "Jonathan Hale." She didn't know the name, or she didn't think she did. But something in the way he said it, like it was a key he expected to fit a lock, made her feel like she was supposed to. "And my father," she stopped, cleared her throat, started again. "Daniel Carter. Worked for my family for 11 years, Jonathan said. He was not just an employee, he was trusted, and then he disappeared, and then 3 months ago he died." "With documents," Emily said. Jonathan Hale went very still. "How do you know about documents?" he asked. "I don't," she said. "I said it because it's the only reason a man like you would be sitting in a car on a street like this, in weather like this, talking to a person like me. Whatever my father took when he left you, want it back." A beat of silence, long enough to feel like a held breath. "Get in the car," Jonathan said. "No. You have a fever. Your lips are—" "I know what my body is doing. I've been managing it for 3 days. She crossed her arms over her chest. "Tell me what you want. I want you to come inside somewhere warm and dry and let me explain." "Explain now, here, in the rain. You have 2 minutes. Something moved across his face, not irritation, something closer to respect, though she wouldn't have named it that yet. "Your father left behind a set of documents when he disappeared," Jonathan said. "Financial records, legal correspondence, information about transactions that certain people would prefer stayed buried. He kept those documents safe for over a decade. When he died, they didn't go with him." He paused. "They went to you, or they're supposed to, which means the people who have been looking for them for 10 years are about to start looking for you." The rain hammered the pavement between them. Emily heard that. She felt it land somewhere low in her stomach, but she kept her face even. "And you," she asked, "are you one of the people looking—" "I'm the one who found you first," he said. "That's the only reason you're still safe." Another car blew past behind her tires through a flooded gutter, and the water hit her from the knees down, cold and filthy and absolute. She gasped. Her ankle caught wrong on the curb edge, and she went down one knee, both palms flat on the wet asphalt, and for one raw, unguarded moment, she could not make herself get back up. Her body just refused. She was shaking, and the cold was inside her bones, and the fever was making the streetlights blur. And she thought, is this it? Is this actually it? She heard the car door open. She was on her feet before he reached her. "Don't," she said. He stopped, 2 feet away. He had stepped out into the rain, and he was getting wet now, which she hadn't expected, and he wasn't reaching for her, just standing there, close enough that she could see his face clearly for the first time. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't come from laughter. "There are letters," he said quietly, "from your father, written to you. He wrote them over 14 years, and he never sent a single one. They're in my house, every one of them." Emily's breath left her body. Not the fever, not the cold. That did it. That was the thing that finally went through her armor like it wasn't there. 14 years of letters. She had been 8 when he left. She was 31 now. The math was immediate and devastating, and she hated him for it, even as she felt the ground shift beneath her. "Why would he send them to you?" she asked, and her voice came out almost steady. "Because he trusted me," Jonathan said. "Once, before everything went wrong." She looked at him in the rain for a long moment. Then she walked to the car and got in. She sat as far from him as the seat allowed, spine-straight, hands locked in her lap. Eyes forward. The driver, a large man with a face that revealed nothing, pulled smoothly into traffic as if this were completely ordinary. As if men like Jonathan Hale found women like Emily Carter on flooded streets every Tuesday night. "I'm not staying," she said. "Understood. I'll look at the documents and the letters, and then I'm leaving." "Understood. And don't call my employers again without asking me." A pause. I know." She turned and looked at him directly for the first time since getting in the car. "I know you already called them, because that's what men like you do. You move pieces around a board, and then you explain that it was for the other person's benefit. My mother had a landlord who spoke exactly the way you speak. Smooth, reasonable, always helpful, right up until he wasn't." Jonathan Hale looked at her. He didn't defend himself. He didn't apologize. He said, "Your father said you'd be like this." "Like what?" "Difficult to rescue." "I'm not being rescued," Emily said flatly. "I'm being transported. There's a difference." For just a second, just one, she thought she saw the corner of his mouth move. The car passed through a set of gates. She watched the city disappear behind iron. Inside, the house wrapped around her like a held breath. Mrs. Brooks' 60s, composed the kind of efficient that has survived many difficult situations, met them in the entrance hall and said without preamble, "Guest suite, second floor. Dr. Reyes is waiting." "I don't need a doctor," Emily said. "Everyone says that," Mrs. Brooks replied in the tone of a woman who had stopped listening to that sentence years ago. Dr. Reyes confirmed everything Emily already knew. Fever 102, dehydration. The beginning of something in her lungs that would become serious if she didn't stop. He gave her medication and water and said 48 hours of rest with the professional neutrality of a man who charged enough that he didn't need to be liked. When he left, Emily sat on the edge of a bed that was probably wider than her kitchen and pressed her palms flat on the mattress and breathed. The room was quiet. The rain against the window was just sound now, not threat. The fever medication had started to soften the static in her head. She thought about her father. She had not allowed herself to think about her father in a very long time. She had a system for it. When the thought started, she replaced it. She replaced it with the grocery list, with rent math, with the name of the customer at table 7 who needed a refill. It was a good system. It had worked for years. It wasn't working right now. She told herself 2 hours of sleep, just 2, then find the letters, read them, understand what's happening, and leave before this place gets any further under your skin. She was asleep in 4 minutes. She woke and the door was locked. She discovered it the way you discover something you trusted, by reaching for it and finding it missing. Her hand closed on the handle and it didn't turn, and she stood there for 3 full seconds, completely still, her heart going from 0 to 60 in the space of one breath. She tried it again. She walked to the window and looked down. Iron gates at the far end of the drive. A man near the entrance whose posture said he was not there for decoration. She knocked on the door. 3 knocks. Even. Controlled. Mrs. Brooks's voice came through immediately, which meant she had been posted there. Waiting. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "The door is locked," Emily said. "For your..." "Open it." A pause. Mr. Hale would like to speak with you before. Open this door right now, Emily said, still quiet, still level, or I will put the bedside lamp through that window and climb out. Silence, and then the soft mechanical click of a lock releasing. Brooks stood in the doorway with an expression of perfect practiced neutrality that told Emily everything. This had happened before. Someone had stood in this room before, confused and frightened, and been managed by this same face wearing this same composure. Emily walked past her into the hall without a word. She found Jonathan Hale coming around the corner. At the far end of the corridor, sweet, pressed face composed, already prepared for her, which meant he'd been told she was awake and he was ready. That should have made her more cautious. Instead, it made her angrier. The door, she said. You were running a high fever. I was concerned you might. You locked me in a room, she said, in your house, without asking, without warning. She stopped 3 feet from him. I need you to understand something right now, Mr. Hale. Locking a door is a choice. It is a very specific choice. And it tells me more about you than anything you said in that car. It was a precaution. No, she said. A precaution is a deadbolt on your own door. Locking someone else in a room is control. Let's call it what it is. He looked at her, that weighing look again, like he was assessing something that surprised him. It won't happen again, he said. I know it won't, she said, because if it does, I'm gone. I don't care what's in those letters. I don't care what my father left behind. I don't care about your documents or your estate or whatever debt you think binds me to this situation. I walk out of this house barefoot in the middle of the night and you will never find me again. She paused. Are we clear? We're clear, he said. Good. She exhaled slowly. The letters. Today. After breakfast. Now. Emily. He said her name with something in it, not command, not warmth exactly, but wait. You have a fever of 102. The letters aren't going anywhere. Sit down. Eat something. Be a person for 20 minutes. She looked at him for a long time. Breakfast, she said finally. Then the letters. Then you tell me everything, what my father took, who's looking for it, and exactly what role you expect me to play in whatever comes next. Not pieces. Everything. Agreed. She started past him. Emily. She stopped. Your father wrote about you in the letters, Jonathan said. Not to explain himself, not to ask forgiveness. He wrote about who you were becoming, what you were surviving. He was watching from a distance all those years. A pause. He was proud of you. She stood with her back to him and said absolutely nothing, because there are things you do not let a stranger see you feel. There are things you carry alone because the weight of them, if shared, would make you feel like something broken, rather than something still standing. She had been standing for 23 years without her father's pride. She did not need it now, she told herself that. She walked to the dining room. Her hands were shaking just slightly, just enough that she pressed them flat against the sides of her thighs where no one could see. And she sat down at a table set for two, and she looked at the morning light coming through the window, and she thought, what did you do? Daniel Carter, what did you do and what did you drag me into? And why is the man you trusted the one sitting across from me right now, watching me the way people watch things they're afraid of lose before they have even had them? Jonathan sat down across from her. He said nothing. She said nothing. And for the first time since she had gotten into that car, the silence between them was not about distance. It was about everything that was coming. And they both knew it. Breakfast was a performance, and they both knew it. Brooks moved around the edges of the room with the quiet efficiency of someone who understood that the two people at this table were not eating. They were circling each other. Emily drank the coffee because her body needed it. She ate the toast because refusing it would have felt like weakness, and she was not prepared to hand Jonathan Hale any more of those. He ate nothing. He sat across from her with his hands around a cup and watched her with that same steady, unreadable patience that had gotten her into the car in the first place. She hated that patience. It felt like a trap she hadn't found the edge of yet. How long have you known where I was? She asked without looking up. 6 weeks. But you waited. I needed to understand the situation fully before I approached you. She looked up at him. You needed 6 weeks to understand the situation. I needed 6 weeks to make sure you'd be safe once I did. She set down her coffee cup. Safe from who? Jonathan was quiet for just a beat too long. That half second of silence told her more than his answer did. There are people who've been trying to locate your father's documents for a long time, he said. When he died, they started paying attention to anyone connected to him, his ex-wife, old colleagues, and eventually he stopped. Eventually his daughter, Emily finished. Yes. She sat back in her chair and looked at him very steadily. So I've been in danger for 3 months and you waited 6 weeks to tell me. You were safe while you were invisible. The moment I made contact, that changed. I needed to be ready. Ready, she repeated. Ready meaning what exactly? Ready meaning armed people at the gate and a locked bedroom door. Ready meaning prepared to keep you alive, he said. And the way he said it, flat, direct, without a trace of drama, was more frightening than any amount of volume would have been. Emily looked at her hands on the table. She was thinking about the last 6 weeks of her life, the double shifts, the dead-end street, the landlord's notes under the door. She had been walking around for 6 weeks inside a story she didn't know she was in, and that thought didn't frighten her as much as it should have. Mostly it made her tired. I want to see the letters, she said. Jonathan rose from the table without another word. She followed him through the house, down a long corridor, past rooms with closed doors, past a staircase that went somewhere she hadn't been yet, until they reached a room lined with shelves on every wall. Not a decorative library, a working one, files, binders, legal boxes with printed labels. At the center was a table, and on the table was a single dark box, the kind you get at an office supply store, nothing special, and somehow that ordinariness made it worse. All those years reduced to cardboard. Before you open that, Jonathan said, I need you to understand something. I understand plenty. Emily, that weight in her name again. What you find in there is going to change the story you've been telling yourself about your father. I need you to be prepared for the fact that the change goes in both directions. He wasn't the villain you made him, but he wasn't the victim either. She looked at the box, then at Jonathan. Did you read them, she asked. A pause. Some of them, the ones relevant to the legal situation. You read my father's private letters. I read documents connected to an active threat to your safety. Yes. Her jaw tightened. Is there anything in this house you haven't decided belongs to you? He didn't answer that, which was, she realized, its own kind of answer. She sat down at the table. She pulled the box toward her. She opened it. The letters were bundled in chronological order, each one in its original envelope. Her name written on the front in handwriting she didn't recognize, but somehow still knew the particular careful print of a person writing something they were afraid to say out loud. The oldest envelope was postmarked 22 years ago. She would have been 9. He had been gone less than a year. She did not open that one first. She picked up the most recent, dated 14 months ago, 8 months before he died. She pulled out 2 sheets of paper, unfolded them, and read. The room was very quiet. Jonathan stood near the door with his arms at his sides and said nothing, which was the first thing she had genuinely respected him for since she got into that car. She read the letter twice. Then she put it down on the table and pressed both palms flat on it, like she was trying to keep it from escaping. He knew, she said. Yes. He knew they were looking for him. He knew he was sick. He knew he didn't have much time. And he still didn't. She stopped. Her throat had done something she didn't like. She waited for it to pass. He still didn't reach out. He believed contact would bring the threat directly to you. He believed, she said. That's the word you're using. He believed, like it was a reasonable thing, like disappearing from your daughter's life for 23 years and dying alone in a motel was a rational decision a grown man made. He thought he was protecting you. Emily looked up at Jonathan with an expression that could have cut glass. I was working double shifts at a diner and a hotel simultaneously to keep myself housed, she said. My mother worked herself into a back injury she still has. We ate cereal for dinner 4 nights a week when I was in high school because that's what we could afford. Whatever my father thought he was protecting us from the version we lived was not protection. It was just absence with better intentions. Jonathan said nothing. He didn't try to defend Daniel Carter, didn't try to soften it. He just absorbed it, and that steadiness, that refusal to flinch from what she was saying, made her feel for just a moment fractionally less alone in this room. What's in the financial documents, she asked. That's the second part of what I need to show you. He crossed to one of the shelves and pulled out a legal binder, thick-tabbed, the kind that meant someone had spent a lot of hours organizing very uncomfortable information. He set it on the table beside the box of letters. Your father worked inside a financial and legal structure that I and members of my family built over 30 years, Jonathan said. It involved trust shell companies, real estate partnerships, and a set of contracts that moved money in ways that were technically legal and practically predatory. Tenants displaced, workers underpaid under subsidiary agreements, pension funds redirected, small businesses pushed out of neighborhoods that were then redeveloped at a profit. He said it evenly, like confession that had been rehearsed until it stopped feeling like confession. Your father was not the architect, but he was a participant. And when he realized the full scope of what he'd been involved in, he started documenting it. Emily stared at him. He was building a case. He was building insurance, Jonathan said, to start with. He wanted protection, not justice. But somewhere in the last few years, he paused. He changed his mind. The letters, Emily said slowly, he wrote to you about the people who got hurt, not the legal structure, the actual people, families. He wrote their names. He wrote what happened to them. I think it was the only way he could live with it, writing it down and pretending that one day you'd know. Emily looked down at the box, all those envelopes, all those names he'd carried alone. What do you want from me? She asked. Right now, nothing. I want you to read. I want you to understand what your father built and what he broke and what he left behind. Everything else is a conversation for after. She looked at him for a long moment. You're not telling me something. There are things that are better understood in order. That is not an answer. It's the answer I have right now, Sim. She held his gaze. He held hers. And then she picked up the next letter in the pile and started reading because whatever Jonathan Hale was holding back, the fastest way to it was through these pages. She read for 2 hours. Jonathan left the room. Mrs. Brooks came in with more coffee and left without speaking. Outside the house moved around her footsteps, distant voices. The sound of a door somewhere, someone on a phone, and none of it touched her. She was in the letters. Her father had been brilliant. That surprised her, though it shouldn't have. She had let herself remember him only as the man who left. Not as a person who had once been good at something, who had thought carefully about the world, who had been funny in a dry, quiet way that surfaced in odd moments between the grief and the guilt. She read those moments and felt something terrible and involuntary move through her chest. She hated him for making her feel that. She was on the 12th letter. She was 14 in this one. He described watching her walk home from school through a car window, on a street 2 blocks from where they used to live, and not getting out, not speaking, just watching, because he had told himself that if she looked unhappy, he would walk away. And if she looked fine, he would walk away. And either way, he walked away when the door to the library opened, and it was not Mrs. Brooks. It was a man she had not seen before. 50s, expensive suit, the kind of physical confidence that came not from the gym, but from decades of being the smartest person in whatever room he chose to enter. He looked at Emily sitting at the table with the letters spread in front of her, and his expression went through several things very quickly. Surprise, assessment, and then something she could only describe it as calculation. You must be the Carter girl, he said. Emily set down the letter. I must be, she said. He crossed to the table without being invited and extended his hand. Thomas Hale, Jonathan's uncle. I manage the family's legal interests. She shook his hand because refusing it would have told him too much. His grip was firm and a half-second too long. I wasn't aware we had a guest, Thomas said in the voice of a man who was extremely aware. Jonathan didn't mention me, Emily asked. Jonathan keeps his own counsel. He smiled. It was a perfectly assembled smile. I'm sure he's explained the situation to you, the documents your father held, the rather delicate position that puts all of us in. He picked up one of the letters from the table, one of the ones she had already read, and glanced at it. Emily stood up. Please put that down, she said. Thomas looked up from the letter. He seemed genuinely surprised, like objects in this house had not previously told him what to do. It's a private letter written to me, Emily said. Put it down. He put it down, slowly, deliberately, the way people put things down when they want you to know they could pick them back up anytime they chose. Miss Carter, Thomas said, I want to help you. I want to make sure you're protected through what could be a very complicated legal situation. If you'll allow me, I can explain the options available to you. What options? There is an agreement, he said smoothly, that would formalize your relationship to your father's estate and clarify the legal status of the documents he held. It's straightforward. It would ensure you're compensated fairly, that you're protected from liability, and that the whole matter is resolved quietly. Emily looked at him. She said nothing. Quiet resolutions, Thomas continued, are almost always in everyone's best interest, especially for someone in your position. My position, she repeated. You're a young woman without legal representation in possession of documents connected to significant financial interests. That's a vulnerable place to be, and signing your agreement would make it less vulnerable. Considerably. She picked up the letter he had touched, straightened it, and placed it face down on the stack. Get out of this room, she said. Thomas blinked, just once quickly. A crack in the finish. Miss Carter, I haven't spoken to a lawyer. I don't know what's in those documents fully yet. I don't know you, and you walked in here while I was alone, picked up my private correspondence, and immediately offered me an agreement. She looked at him steadily. So either you tell your nephew his uncle just tried to close a deal without him, or I will. Either way, this conversation is over. Thomas Hale looked at her for a long moment. The smile was gone completely now. What was underneath it was not angry, it was something colder and more patient than anger. You are very much your father's daughter, he said. I'll take that as a compliment, she said, even though you didn't mean it as one. He left. Emily sat back down. Her heart was going hard and fast, but her hands on the table were completely still. She had learned that a long time ago in diners with customers who grabbed her arm, in offices with managers who stood too close, in every situation where showing fear was the same as losing. Keep the hands still. Keep the voice level. Let the fear live in your chest where nobody can see it. She picked up the next letter. She had read 4 more when Jonathan walked in. She saw his face the moment he cleared the doorway. And she knew immediately that he already knew. Your uncle came to see me, she said. I know. His jaw was tight in a way she hadn't seen before. Mrs. Brooks told me. He had a document, an agreement. I know. Did you know he was going to do that? Jonathan crossed to the table and stood across from her, and for the first time since she had arrived in this house, he looked like a man operating outside the margins of his own plan. No, he said, I didn't. She studied him. She was good at reading people. She had to be in her work, where reading a table in the first 30 seconds determined whether you made rent that week. Jonathan Hale was not lying. He was also not telling her everything. He's been in these files, she said. A pause. He has access to some of, not your files, she said, my father's files. He knew the specific language of the documents before I did. He quoted terms I haven't even read yet. She watched Jonathan's expression move through something it couldn't quite contain, which means either you told him or he has a source inside this house. The silence that followed was very loud. Jonathan? She said his name for the first time, and the way he looked at her when she did told her it landed differently than she expected. Is this house safe? He looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked to the door, opened it, and said to someone in the hallway, Get Ethan, right now. He came back into the room, closed the door. I'm going to tell you something, he said, that I was going to tell you after you'd had more time with the letters, but you've already found the edge of it, so. He sat down across from her for the first time, not standing over the situation, not managing it from a distance, but sitting down in it. The people looking for your father's documents are not outside this estate. One of them has been inside it for years. Emily did not move. She just looked at him. You built this, she said quietly. I built part of it. The part I built I can dismantle. The part I didn't. He stopped. Your father documented something I didn't know about. A layer underneath the layer I was operating in. A set of transactions that Thomas ran independently. That my father authorized before he died. Things I didn't have visibility into until your father's files surfaced. So your uncle isn't protecting the family business, Emily said slowly. He's protecting himself. Yes. From you. Yes. And now he thinks I have the evidence. You do have the evidence, Jonathan said. It's in that box. Emily looked at the box of letters. She looked at the binder. She looked at the table she was sitting at, and the room she was sitting in, and the man across from her, who had over the course of 12 hours gone from stranger to rescuer to jailer to something she did not yet have a category for. "How many people in this house are working for your uncle?" she asked. "I don't know yet." "That's a terrifying answer." "I know. And Ethan, your head of security, you trust him." "He's the only person in this building I'm certain of." She leaned forward on the table. "Then here is what we're going to do," she said. "You are going to move these files somewhere your uncle cannot reach them. Tonight. I am going to finish reading everything in this box, and tomorrow morning I am going to tell you what I want to do with what my father left me. Not what you want, not what your uncle wants, what I want." She paused. "And if I decide these documents go to a journalist or a nonprofit or straight to a federal regulator, you will not stop me. Are we clear?" Jonathan Hale sat across from her in the quiet room, and he looked at this woman who had walked through his gates in soaked sneakers 24 hours ago, and he said without hesitation, "We're clear." She nodded. "Good." She picked up the next letter. "Now close the door on your way out." He did, and Emily sat alone with her father's handwriting and the weight of 23 years pressing down on the table in front of her, and she read every word, and she did not let herself cry until she reached the last letter, the one he wrote a week before he died, the one that started with Emily. If you're reading this, then Jonathan kept his word, and that means the world is slightly better than I feared. She folded it carefully. She held it in both hands. She allowed herself exactly 60 seconds. Then she put it back in the box, and she closed the lid, and she straightened her spine, and she thought, "All right, Daniel Carter, all right, let's finish what you started." Ethan Cole was not what Emily expected. She had built a picture of him from the brief mention, head of security gates closed, posture of someone paid to be immovable. She expected bulk and silence. What she got was a man in his late 30s with a quiet face and eyes that moved constantly, cataloging everything in a room before he committed to standing still in it. He came through the library door 4 minutes after Jonathan called for him, looked at Emily once, and then looked at Jonathan in a way that said he had already assessed the situation and was waiting for permission to act on it. "Someone accessed the East Wing files," Jonathan said, "within the last 48 hours. Ethan didn't react visibly. "How do you know?" "Because Miss Carter identified specific language from documents she hasn't read yet, language that exists only in the lower tier of her father's files." Ethan looked at Emily again. This time was something different in the look. Not suspicion, something closer to recalibration. "You pulled that out of a conversation," he said to her. "With Thomas." "He practically handed it to me," Emily said. "He wanted me to know he'd seen the files. He thought it would make me easier to manage." "Did it?" "No," Ethan nodded once slowly, like he was filing that away somewhere useful. Then he turned back to Jonathan. "I need 2 hours. Don't move the files yet. If we move them now and he's watching, he'll know we've identified the breach." "She stays in this room until we know what's compromised," Jonathan said. "I'm right here," Emily said sharply. "Stop discussing me like I'm a variable." Both men looked at her. "You're right," Jonathan said. "I'm sorry." He said it without the diplomatic softness people use when they're performing an apology. He said it like a man who meant it and was mildly surprised to find that he did. She wasn't sure what to do with that, so she moved past it. "What does Thomas think he can do?" she asked Ethan directly. "If he already has copies of the files, what does coming after me accomplish?" "Copies aren't enough," Ethan said. "The documents your father held include a witness chain, signed statements from people who participated in specific transactions and were willing to testify. Without the originals and the witness identities, the copies are incomplete, suggestive but not actionable." He paused. "Your father was meticulous. He built it so that the whole structure only functions if all the pieces are together. No single piece is the weapon. The weapon is the assembly." Emily sat with that for a moment. "He protected the witnesses." "Until the end," Ethan said. "Yes." She looked at the box on the table. She thought about her father in a motel room in Iowa, alone, sick, carrying all of this. She felt something she didn't want to feel, a reluctant, complicated grief that had nothing to do with forgiveness and everything to do with the recognition that Daniel Carter had been, in whatever broken way, trying. Who knows I'm here, she asked. Within this house, Ethan said. Everyone who works here knew a guest arrived last night. The specific circumstances, he stopped. I can't tell you yet. That's not reassuring. I know. He moved toward the door. 2 hours. Lock this room from the inside. Don't open it unless you hear my voice or Jonathan's. He glanced at Emily one more time. Don't open it for Mrs. Brooks either. Emily's head came up. You think Mrs. Brooks? I don't think anything yet, Ethan said. That's the point I'm at. He left. The room felt different after that, smaller. Emily looked at Jonathan, who was standing near the window with his arms crossed, and she thought 24 hours ago I didn't know this man existed. Now I'm locked in his library with a dead man's secrets and a list of people I can't trust growing by the hour. How long has Ethan worked for you, she asked. 11 years. Since before my father left. Yes. Jonathan turned from the window. He knew your father. Not well, but he's one of the reasons I believe the documents are genuine. Daniel wouldn't have built something this careful unless he was genuinely afraid. He was afraid of Thomas. He was afraid of what Thomas represented, Jonathan said. Thomas isn't operating alone. There's a group investors, a former judge, 2 people currently in municipal government who have exposure in those files. Thomas is their inside man. He's been managing their risk from inside my family for 15 years. And you didn't know. Not the full picture. He said it without deflection, without the softening language people use when they want credit for honesty, without taking responsibility for blindness. I knew Thomas operated at the edges of what I'd sanction. I chose not to look too closely. That's not ignorance, that's complicity of a different kind. Emily studied him. You're confessing? I'm being accurate. Most people in your position wouldn't. Well, most people in my position haven't spent 2 months reading a dead man's letters and feeling ashamed of themselves. He said it flat and clean, and she felt the weight of it land. She looked away first. What happens when Ethan's 2 hours are up? She asked. We know more than we know now, or we know we're more compromised than I hoped. And either way, the library door handle moved. Both of them looked at it simultaneously. The handle turned once, stopped, turned again. Not a knock, not a voice, just a handle being tested slowly by someone on the other side who was hoping it would open without announcing them. Emily was on her feet before she'd made a conscious decision to stand. Jonathan crossed to the door in 4 steps and said calmly through it, "Who's there?" Silence. Then footsteps, quick, retreating, carpet muffled, moving away down the corridor. Jonathan pulled out his phone and called Ethan without speaking to Emily first. East corridor. 30 seconds ago, someone tried the library door. He listened. Yes. He hung up. He turned to Emily. His face was controlled, but she could see something working underneath it. This is escalating faster than I expected, he said. How comforting, Emily said. What do? We move you. To where? There's a room on the 3rd floor, private staircase. 1 entry point. I had it prepared. He stopped. You had it prepared, Emily repeated slowly. Before last night. I told you, I planned carefully before I approached you. You prepared a room, she said. You had a doctor on call. You had my employer's numbers. You had a 2-month surveillance operation. She looked at him directly. Jonathan, before you found me on that street, did you think I would come willingly? Or did you plan for the version where I didn't? The question hung in the air between them, and it was not small. It was the question under all the other questions, the one she had been building toward since she woke up in a locked room. Jonathan held her gaze. He didn't look away, and he didn't answer immediately, and that pause was more honest than either alternative would have been. I planned for every version, he said, because I didn't know you yet. And now I know you well enough to understand that any version that didn't involve your complete cooperation was never going to work regardless of how carefully I planned it. She searched his face. He was not performing that. He meant it, and he meant it in the particular way of a man who had learned something recently about the limits of his own methods. 3rd floor, she said. Fine, but I take the files. The files stay here until Ethan... The files come with me, Soroma, Emily said. They're not yours. They were never yours. They were my father's, and now they're mine, and I go where they go. Another long pause, then an agreed. They moved fast. Jonathan carried the legal binder. Emily carried the box. They took a back staircase she hadn't seen, narrow, functional, the kind of architecture that said this house had been built by people who understood that the powerful always need a route that isn't on the main floor plan. The room on the third floor was smaller than in the guest suite. One window, one door, a table, two chairs, a narrow bed against the wall. It looked like a room someone had packed quickly, and it probably was. Emily set the box on the table and sat down. Jonathan set the binder next to it and remained standing. "I need to ask you something," Emily said. "Ask." "The witnesses, the people my father protected. Do you know who they are?" "Some of them." "Are they still alive?" Jonathan's expression moved. "Most of them. There are two we haven't been able to locate." "When did you start looking?" "After I read your father's letters." He said it quietly. 6 weeks ago. Emily absorbed that, reorganized it against everything else she knew. "So you've been trying to find witnesses to protect them. Not just trying to find me." "Yes. Because you want the case to move forward. Because your father spent 23 years protecting those people at the cost of everything else in his life," Jonathan said. "The least I can do is make sure they're still standing when the truth comes out." She looked at him for a long moment. She was recalculating. She had been recalculating since the car, but this moved something further than it had moved before. She wasn't ready to name what it moved yet. Her phone buzzed. She frowned. She still had no signal. She had checked 4 times since waking up. She pulled it out. It wasn't a text. It was an alert from an app she hadn't opened in years. An old email account she'd set up under a different name in her mid-20s when she was trying to keep her professional life separate from her personal one. She'd forgotten about it almost entirely. The email had been sent 40 minutes ago. No subject line. The sender address was a string of random characters. The body of the email was 6 words. "Don't sign anything. Leave the house." Emily read it twice. Then she held the phone up so Jonathan could see it. His reaction was immediate. He took the phone, looked at the email, and the control in his face cracked. Not into panic, but into something urgent and focused that she found more alarming than panic would have been. "How did anyone get this address?" Emily asked. "Your father," Jonathan said. "He had a list of contact points for you in case." He was already typing on his own phone. "This means one of the witnesses is active. Someone who knew your father knew this address and knows what's happening inside this house right now. Someone on the inside. Someone watching the inside from the outside." He looked up. "This changes things." "How?" "It means we're not alone in this. Your father built a network, Emily, not just documents, people. People who've been waiting to see if anyone would do anything with what he left behind." Emily sat back in the chair slowly. She thought about her father writing letters in motel rooms. She thought about him watching her walk home from school and not getting out of the car. She thought about a man who had spent 2 decades building something careful and patient and then dying before he could use it. She thought about those 6 words on her phone screen. "Don't sign anything. Leave the house." "I'm not leaving," she said. Jonathan looked at her. "Whoever sent that is outside these walls," Emily said. "If they knew enough to warn me, they know enough to know that leaving puts me in the open, in the rain, without protection." She paused. "Which means they're not sending that message because it's what's safest for me. They're sending it because it's what's safest for whatever they're protecting." The silence in the room shifted. "You think the warning isn't for you," Jonathan said slowly. "I think the warning is for whoever sent it," Emily said. "Someone is worried about what I'll find in these files if I stay, and that means there's something in here I haven't found yet." She pulled the box toward her and started going through it with different hands, not reading now, but sorting, looking, running her fingers along the bottom of the box, the way she'd once seen her mother search a coat pocket for something she knew was there. Her hands found it before her eyes did. A thin envelope, no bigger than a note card, taped flat against the inside bottom of the box where it would blend with the cardboard unless you were pressing. She peeled it loose. Jonathan was at her shoulder now. Close. She could feel the shift in his breathing. She opened it. Inside was a single folded piece of paper and a small metal key. The paper had 4 lines written on it in her father's handwriting. Not a letter, a set of numbers, and a single name. The name was not Thomas Hale. It was not Jonathan Hale. It was a woman's name, a name that meant nothing to Emily, but clearly meant something to Jonathan because she heard his breath go out of him like she'd hit him. "Who is that?" Emily asked. Jonathan didn't answer immediately. He reached out and picked up the paper and held it the way you hold something fragile or something dangerous, sometimes both. "She was my father's attorney," he said. "She died 4 years ago," or he stopped. "Or," Emily said, "the death was never, the body was never." He put the paper down. He stepped back. "Emily, if your father had evidence that Margaret Voss is alive, then she's one of the missing witnesses." "She's not just a witness," Jonathan said, and now his voice had something in it that hadn't been there before, something she could only describe as the sound of a person watching a foundation crack. "She was the architect, the one who designed the legal structure, the shell companies, the trusts, the instruments that hid the money. If she's alive and your father found her, she doesn't just know what was done. She knows how to undo it, all of it, legally, completely." Emily looked at the key in her palm. "What does this open?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but you're going to find out." "Yes." She closed her fingers around it. "Then we find out together," she said. "Mug you running pointed and me waiting in a locked room. Together. Every piece, same time, same table." He looked at her. She had said it as a condition, not a request, and they both knew it. "Together," he said. Then Ethan's voice came through the door, quick and low. "Jonathan, we have a problem. Thomas is gone, car's gone, and one of the kitchen staff isn't answering for their last 2 hours." Emily and Jonathan looked at each other across the small table with her father's files between them and a key to something neither of them fully understood yet. And the problem that had started on a flooded street in the middle of the night was no longer a problem that lived inside this house. It had just walked out the front door, and it was moving towards something. "How long ago?" Jonathan called back. "Best estimate, an hour," Ethan said. "Right around the time Miss Carter found the hidden envelope." The calculation hit them both at the same moment. "There's a camera," Emily said, flat and cold, "in this room." Jonathan was already moving. He crossed to the far wall and ran his hand along the edge of a shelf until his fingers found the small device, no bigger than a shirt button, pressed flush against the wood. He held it between 2 fingers and looked at it. Then he looked at Emily. "Your father told me you were smart," he said. "My father should have told me a few things sooner," Emily replied. She held out her hand. He placed the camera in her palm. She looked at it for one moment. Then she set it on the table, face up, picked up the box, the binder, the key, and the 4 lines of her father's handwriting. "We need to move," she said. "Right now, and wherever we go next, there are no cameras. Not a single one. You check every wall." Jonathan was already at the door. "Ethan," he called, "get the car." The car moved through the city without headlights for the first 2 blocks. Ethan's call. Emily didn't ask why. She was starting to understand that in this world, the reasons came after the actions, and you either trusted the person making the call or you got out and walked. She was not getting out and walking. Not this time. She sat in the back seat with the box on her lap and the key pressed inside her closed fist, and she watched the city slide past the windows, and she thought about the camera. The button-sized camera pressed flush against the wall of a room in a house she had been brought to for her protection. Someone had watched her read her father's letters. Someone had watched the exact moment she found the hidden envelope. And the moment she found it, within the hour, Thomas Hale had gotten in his car and driven towards something. "Where would Thomas go?" she asked. Ethan answered from the front seat without turning around. "He has a property outside the city, 40 minutes northeast. He uses it for meetings he doesn't want on the estate's calendar." "Is that where he's going now?" "That's my best guess. Can we get there first?" A pause. Ethan glanced at Jonathan. Jonathan looked at Emily. "Why would we want to get there first?" Jonathan asked. "Because Thomas left when he saw me find the envelope," Emily said. "Which means whoever he's going to meet is connected to what's in that envelope. And if Margaret Voss is alive and your father's attorney has been hiding for 4 years, the person Thomas is running to right now either knows where she is or is the reason she's hiding." She paused. "We don't chase Thomas. We get ahead of him." Ethan said nothing for 3 seconds. Then, "She's right." Jonathan looked at Emily with an expression she was getting familiar with, the one he wore when she said something that moved his understanding of the situation forward faster than he had expected. She had stopped finding it flattering. It was just data. The key, Jonathan said. We need to know what it opens before we walk into anything. Emily uncurled her fist and looked at it again. Small, brass, the kind of key that opened a box or a drawer or a locker, not a door. On the bow, nearly worn smooth, a number 114. A safety deposit box, Ethan said. He had glanced in the rearview mirror. Old style. That number, that's a box number, not a key code. Probably a smaller institution, private bank, or a legacy credit union. The kind that still uses physical keys. My father's financial records, Emily said. She was already opening the binder on her lap, flipping tabs. He listed accounts in the documentation. 2 of them are flagged with asterisks. I noticed it when I was reading, but I didn't. She found the page, ran her finger down a column of numbers, stopped. Mercantile Trust, listed under a subsidiary name. Account opened 19 years ago. She looked up. Is Mercantile Trust still operating? There's a branch on Callaway Street, Ethan said. 8 minutes from here. Then that's where we go first, Emily said. Jonathan put his hand on her arm, not grabbing, just stopping her momentum for 1 second. Emily, if we open that box, there is no version of today where we put everything back. Whatever your father put in there 19 years ago, it's either the thing that ends this or the thing that makes it significantly more dangerous. She looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face. Jonathan, she said quietly, I have been managing dangerous with nothing my entire life. I managed it with no money, no connections, no name worth anything to anyone. You know what the difference is now? She looked down at the box on her lap, the binder, the key. Now I have something, and I am done managing from a position of nothing. He took his hand back. He turned to Ethan. Callaway Street, he said. Ethan drove. The bank was the kind of institution that felt like it had survived 3 decades by refusing to modernize a brass-plated door, a human teller behind a physical window, a safety deposit room in the back that required a signature and a key, and a staff member who walked you in and turned her key alongside yours without making eye contact. The kind of privacy you couldn't buy anymore. The kind Daniel Carter would have specifically chosen. Emily signed the access card under the subsidiary name listed in the binder. Her hand was steady. The teller looked at the signature, looked at Emily, looked at the key, and did not ask a single question. Old banks had institutional memory. They knew some boxes were better left unexamined. Box 114 was the size of a shoebox. Emily carried it to the private room. Jonathan stood outside the door. She had asked him to, and he had agreed without argument, which told her he understood that whatever was in here was hers first and shared second. She opened it alone. Inside was a sealed envelope, thick legal, size a small recording device, the kind that ran on batteries and looked like it was from 15 years ago, and a folded document with a notary seal on the front. She opened the document first. It took her 4 minutes to read it. Her legal training was non-existent, but her capacity for parsing the language of power had been sharpened by years of reading leases and loan agreements in work contracts written specifically to confuse the person signing them. She read it slowly and she understood it completely. Her father had named her his legal successor in a witness protection agreement signed by 3 parties, Daniel Carter, Margaret Voss, and a federal mediator whose name she recognized from the newspaper 2 years ago. A name she recognized because the man had retired with commendation. A man who was now private practice. A man who, if this document was what she thought it was, had been holding the seal on this agreement for 19 years and counting. The agreement said this: if Daniel Carter died before the documentation was presented to federal authorities, his successor named on page 3 as Emily Ann Carter inherited both the right to present the evidence and the protected witness status that came with it. Her father hadn't just left her letters. He had left her a legal shield. She sat with that for a moment. Her hands were not shaking. She felt very calm in the particular way of a person who has been hit so hard the pain hasn't reached them yet. She picked up the recording device. Press play. Her father's voice came out of it like something from another dimension, lower than she'd imagined, with a Midwestern flatness and the particular rhythm of a man choosing his words carefully because he knew they might be the last ones. Emily. If you're hearing this, then Jonathan kept his promise and you're still standing. I need to tell you 3 things quickly because the recording cuts off at 4 minutes and I've wasted enough of your time already. She pressed her back against the wall and listened. First, Margaret Voss is alive. She's been in federal informal protection since she helped me build the case 4 years ago. She faked her death because Thomas had a source inside the original investigation and she had no other option. She's the only person who can activate the full legal structure of what we built. You need to reach her through the mediator. His name is in the document. He's the bridge at bottom. Don't contact her directly until you've spoken to him. Emily's eyes were open, but she wasn't seeing the room. Second, Jonathan Hale is not your enemy. I know you'll have decided that by now, regardless of what I say, because that's who you are. But I'm saying it anyway. He found things in his own family that he didn't put there. He's been trying to make it right in the only way he knows how, which is imperfect, because he's still a man who grew up owning things. But his instinct on your safety is sound. Trust Ethan unconditionally. On Jonathan, trust him carefully. He's earned more than he knows. She breathed through her nose. Slowly. Third, I know I don't get to ask you for anything. I know the word father stopped meaning what it should have meant before you were old enough to protect yourself from the absence of it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to remember me generously. I'm asking you to finish this. Not for me, for the 47 families documented in those files. For the workers. For the tenants who lost their homes while my signature was on documents I should have refused. I built something wrong and then I spent 20 years trying to make the wreckage into something useful and I ran out of time. You didn't ask for any of this, but you are the only person I trust with it. That's not a compliment. That's just the truth. A pause. 4 seconds of silence on the tape. I'm proud of you, Emily. I've always been proud of you. That didn't make me a good father. It just made me a man who knew what he was missing. The recording ended. Emily sat in the silence for a long time. Not crying, not moving, just sitting with the way you sit with something that has rearranged your interior without asking permission first. Then she stood up. She put everything back in the envelope. She put the device on top of it. She put the sealed envelope inside her jacket, flat against her ribs. She walked out. Jonathan looked at her face and read it immediately. Not what she was feeling, she wasn't showing him that, but the level of what she was carrying. She could see him recalibrate his posture slightly, making room for the weight she was bringing out with her. We need to find a man named Garrett Sims, she said. He's a mediator. Private practice now. His name is in the document. Jonathan's expression shifted. I know who Garrett Sims is. Of course you do. He handled 2 of my family's agreements in the 90s, before my father died. He paused. He and Thomas had a falling out, professionally, about 12 years ago. Over what? Over ethics, Jonathan said. Specifically over what Thomas was willing to do when the ethics became inconvenient. Emily looked at him steadily. Then Sims is not Thomas's ally. No. Can you reach him? Within the hour. Do it now, she said. And then because it needed saying, my father trusted you. He said so on the recording. She watched Jonathan absorb that. He also said you grew up owning things, and that makes you imperfect. I'm telling you both parts because I think you've only been told the comfortable half for too long. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Then he wasn't wrong. I know he wasn't. She moved past him toward the car. Call Sims. We need to be in a room with him before Thomas reaches whoever he's running to. They were back in the car and moving when Ethan's phone rang. He answered it on the car's speaker without asking, which told Emily he had already set the threshold for what counted as urgent, and everything counted as urgent now. The voice on the speaker was a woman's. Older. Careful. The voice of someone who had spent years measuring every word against the possibility that someone was recording it. Is Emily Carter in the vehicle? The voice asked. Emily leaned forward. I'm here. A pause. Your father said you'd get to Mercantile Trust within 48 hours of arriving at the Hale estate. He said if you did, you were ready. If you didn't, you were gone. Another pause. You made it in less than 24. Who is this? Emily asked, though she already knew. My name was Margaret Voss, the woman said. For the last 4 years, I've been someone else. But if you've got the document and you've heard the recording, then I think it's time I started using my name again. The car was completely silent except for road noise. Where are you? Emily asked. Closer than you think, Margaret Voss said. And I've been watching Thomas Hale's car on a tracker since he left the estate 40 minutes ago. He's not going to his property outside the city. A pause. He's going to the federal building on Morrison Street. He has a contact inside the organized crime division. Has had one for 6 years. That's how he stayed ahead of every investigation. That's the source I couldn't identify 4 years ago when I faked my death. Emily looked at Jonathan. His face had gone completely still. You know what that means, Margaret said. It wasn't a question. It means any official channel is compromised, Ethan said from the front. It means we can't take this to the standard federal process, Emily said, because the standard federal process has Thomas's hand inside it. Yes, Margaret said, so we go around it, Emily said. The mediator, Sims, the witness agreement, the agreement routes around the standard investigative channel, doesn't it? It goes directly to the oversight body. A pause, a longer one this time. Your father said you get there, Margaret said, and there was something in her voice Emily couldn't quite name. Not sentiment, exactly. Something harder and more real than that. Yes, the agreement bypasses the divisional level entirely. It was designed to. Your father and I built it specifically for the scenario where the standard channel was dirty. It activates through the mediator and goes directly to the Inspector General's office. Then that's where we go, Emily said. There's a problem, Margaret said. Of course there is. Sims has been unreachable for 6 hours. His office says he's in meetings. His mobile goes to voicemail. A pause. Thomas may have got to him first, or Thomas may simply be trying to make him unavailable long enough to get the Hale family to sign a suppression agreement before Sims can activate the witness chain. Emily thought fast. If Sims is unavailable but not compromised, he'll have a fail-safe, a secondary contact, someone who can initiate the process if he can't. His paralegal, Margaret said immediately, a woman named Rosa Gutierrez. She's been with him for 22 years. She knows everything. She's not named anywhere in the formal documentation, which means she's not a target yet. Yet, Emily said. Yet, Margaret confirmed. Emily looked at Jonathan. Do you know her? No, Jonathan said, but I can find her in 20 minutes. Find her in 10, Emily said. Jonathan was already on his phone. Emily sat back and pressed her hand against her ribs, where the envelope sat flat against her skin, and she thought about 47 families. She thought about workers and tenants in the particular violence of elegant language used to move people out of their lives. She thought about her mother's back injury and the cereal for dinner nights, and the particular quality of silence in an apartment where a parent is working through pain they won't name because naming it would frighten the child. She thought about her father's voice on the tape. You are the only person I trust with it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. 4 words. They know about Rosa. She held the phone up so Ethan could see it in the mirror. He accelerated. That text, Jonathan said. Is it Margaret of a different number? Then someone else is watching, Ethan said. Someone who knows Rosa's name and knows it's relevant. A second active witness, Emily said. My father's network. He said in the letters he built a network, not just documents, but people. How many people? Jonathan asked. I don't know, Emily said. But they're activating now, which means they've been waiting for someone to move, and the moment I moved, they started moving too. Her phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. This time an address, and below the address, 2 words, she's safe. They already have Rosa, Emily said. The car went quiet. Then Ethan said, Daniel Carter built a backup system for his backup system. He had 23 years, Emily said. He had a lot of time to think. She felt something shift inside her as she said it. Not forgiveness, she was nowhere near that word and wasn't sure she ever would be, but something adjacent to understanding. A man who was too afraid to come home building the most elaborate coming home he could imagine instead. A man turning his guilt into architecture. It was not enough. It would never have been enough, but it was something. Jonathan got off his phone. Rosa Gutierrez is safe. Sims is apparently unreachable by design. His office blocked his calls at 11 this morning on his instruction. He anticipated Thomas would try to reach him. He's been waiting for us to show up in person. He's been waiting for me, Emily said. For the Carter successor, yes, Jonathan said. He apparently told his paralegal to watch for a woman who would arrive angry and without an appointment. Emily almost laughed. My father briefed him on my personality. Apparently. Of course he did. She looked out the window. Where is Sims? His home office. He told Rosa to give us the address if we made contact. He's been sitting there all morning. Then that's where we go, Emily said. Thomas doesn't know about the home office, Jonathan added. It's not registered to Sims's name. It's under his wife's maiden name. 30-year-old paperwork. Emily nodded. She was already thinking past the next hour through the sequence of what came after, what it would cost and what it would change and who it would hurt in the necessary way and who it would help in the way that actually mattered. She was thinking the way she had always thought when the situation was at its most extreme, clearly, practically, without the luxury of feeling everything at once. But underneath all of that clear, practical thinking, she was also holding on to one specific sentence from her father's voice on that tape. I've always been proud of you. She didn't forgive him for it. She wasn't going to perform a healing she hadn't reached, but she held it, just for the drive, just until the next thing started. Because after this was over, after every document was placed and every witness was heard, and every elegant machine of harm had been dismantled, piece by piece, she was going to need something to do with the grief that didn't have a name yet. The grief that was also underneath the anger and the exhaustion, the shape of a daughter who had waited by the window a very long time. Ethan, she said. Yeah. Drive fast. He drove fast. Garrett Sims opened the door before they knocked. He was smaller than Emily had imagined, a compact man in his late 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of deliberate stillness that came not from calm, but from decades of training himself not to react visibly to things that deserved a reaction. He looked at Emily first, then at Jonathan, then back at Emily, and something in his face shifted, the professional neutrality cracking just slightly at the edges, like a man who had been waiting a very long time for a specific person to walk through a specific door. You have the document, he said. It wasn't a question. And the recording, Emily said. He stepped back and let them in without another word. His home office was exactly the kind of room a man builds when he has stopped caring what anyone thinks of his taste books, stacked sideways case files in labeled piles on every flat surface, a desk that had clearly never been cleared in the 20 years it had occupied that corner. He moved through it without looking at it, which meant he knew exactly where everything was, which meant the case was a filing system only he could read. Emily set the box and the binder on the one clear corner of his desk. She put the envelope on top of both. Sims sat down. He opened the envelope. He read the document with the efficiency of a man who had written half the language in it, himself moving through sections without pausing, lips barely moving. When he reached page 3, her name Emily Ann Carter, successor. He stopped. He took off his glasses, cleaned them on his shirt, put them back on, and read it again. He added the successor clause 4 years ago, Sims said, after Margaret went under. I didn't know who he'd named. He looked up at Emily. He never told me. He was careful, Emily said. He was terrified, Sims said. Not unkindly, just precisely. Jonathan was standing near the doorway, close enough to be present, far enough to make clear this was Emily's meeting. She had not asked him to do that. He had simply understood it. She noted that and filed it away. Thomas Hale is at the federal building on Morrison Street, she said to Sims. He has a contact inside the organized crime division. He's been using that contact for 6 years to stay ahead of investigations. Sims nodded slowly. I suspected something at the divisional level. I couldn't prove it. We can prove it now, Emily said. It's in the files. My father documented 3 specific instances where sealed investigation details were leaked to a private attorney who billed Thomas Hale's subsidiary the following week. The billing records are in the binder. Tab 7. Sims opened the binder, found tab 7, read. The room was quiet except for the sound of pages turning. Jonathan's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his face did the thing Emily had learned to watch, the micro-compression around his jaw that meant the information was bad. What? She said. Thomas isn't at the federal building anymore, Jonathan said. He left 20 minutes ago. Ethan's tracker has him moving toward the east side. A pause. Toward Mercantile Trust. Emily felt the floor shift under her. He knows about the box. The camera, Jonathan said. He saw you find the key. He would have recognized the number. The box is empty, Emily said immediately. Everything we took from it is in this room. He'll get there and find nothing. That's not the problem, Jonathan said. The problem is that Thomas going to that bank means he's not trying to suppress the evidence anymore. He's trying to confirm it's already been activated. If the box is empty, he'll know we've moved. His voice was controlled, but she could hear the edge underneath it. He'll stop trying to get ahead of us. He'll start trying to stop us entirely, the way people like Thomas stop things when time runs out. The sentence sat in the room. Sims looked up from the binder. He looked at Emily. How quickly can you be ready to give a formal statement? Right now, she said. The process requires. Right now, she said again. Tell me what you need from me, and I will give it to you in this room in the next 30 minutes. Whatever the formal requirements are, we meet them here and we move. Because the moment Thomas realizes this box is empty and this document is activated, he will call in every favor he has, and some of those favors are in rooms that could slow this down for months. She leaned forward on the desk. My father spent 23 years building this, so it couldn't be slowed down. I am not going to let it get slowed down in the last hour. Sims looked at her for a long moment. Then he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a recording device not unlike the one her father had left in the box and set it on the desk between them. Then we start now, he said. She started talking. She had not known until she opened her mouth in that room how much she had absorbed in the last 24 hours. But it came out of her in ordered, specific, detailed sequence. The files, the letters, the witness chain, the billing records, the camera in the wall, the email from the unknown number, Margaret Voss's phone call, the leaked investigation details in tab 7. She spoke the way she had learned to speak in every situation where the other person held power over some piece of her life, steadily, specifically, without gaps they could fill with their own interpretation. Sims recorded it all. Jonathan stood near the door and did not interrupt once. 18 minutes and Sims's phone rang. He silenced it without looking at it. It rang again. He silenced it again. The third time he glanced at the screen and went very still. It's Thomas, he said. Nobody moved. Let it ring, Emily said. It rang 4 times and stopped. Then a text came through. Sims read it. His face went through something Emily couldn't fully read. Not fierce, something older and more complicated. He knows you're here, Sims said. How? He doesn't say. He says, Sims set the phone face down on the desk. He says if I activate the agreement, he will make sure the secondary witnesses are discredited before they can testify. He has documentation, he says, of financial payments made to 2 of them, payments that would make them look like paid informants rather than genuine witnesses. Emily stared at him. Are the payments real? I don't know, Sims said. They could be fabricated. Thomas has the resources to fabricate something convincing he checked his watch, in the amount of time since he left the federal building. Jonathan crossed the room in 3 steps. He's bluffing. He has to be bluffing. He doesn't have time to. He had 6 years, Emily said quietly. Both men looked at her. He's been in that house for 6 years with access to the files and access to my father's network. If he identified the secondary witnesses, and he's had years to build a counter-narrative, not to use unless he had to. She felt cold and clear in the way she got when the situation became most serious. This is his unless he had to. Sims took off his glasses. If the secondary witnesses are discredited, the case is significantly weakened. Not destroyed, the documentary evidence is strong enough to carry a significant portion of the charges. But the human testimony, the workers, the tenants, is the part that makes it real, Emily said. The documents show the mechanism. The witnesses show the cost. Without the witnesses, it's a financial crime. With them, it's 47 families. She stood up straight. Where are the secondary witnesses right now? Margaret has been coordinating their safety, Sims said. Emily pulled out her phone and called the number Margaret had used. It rang twice. I know, Margaret said when she picked up. I just saw the same text. He sent it to 3 people simultaneously. He wants all of us to know he has it. Is it real? Emily asked. The payments, documentation. A pause long enough to feel like its own answer. One of them might be, Margaret said. Daniel made a payment to a witness 8 years ago. Not to buy testimony, to help a family that had been completely destroyed financially by what was done to them. He paid 3 months of their rent out of his own account because he felt responsible, and he couldn't think of another way to help. Her voice tightened. It was a human act. Thomas will make it look like witness tampering. The room was very quiet. Jonathan said, "Then we get ahead of it." Everyone looked at him. "We don't wait for Thomas to deploy it," Jonathan said. "We put it in the record ourselves, right now, before he can use it as a weapon." He looked at Sims. If Emily's formal statement includes the context of that payment, the dates, the circumstances, Daniel's own words about why he made it documented in the letters, it's not suppressed evidence. It's contextualized evidence. Thomas can't weaponize something that's already been explained in the record. Sims looked at him for a moment, then at Emily. "He's right," Emily said. "Is there a letter that covers it?" "Letter 19, she said immediately. She knew because she had read it twice. It was the one where her father described sitting outside a family's evicted apartment and feeling like the architect of a demolition site. He describes the payment directly. He names the family, the date, the amount, and the reason, in his own handwriting. She opened the box, found letter 19, put it in front of Sims. Sims read it. His jaw moved once like something was catching in his throat. He cleared it professionally and turned the recording device back on. "Continue your statement," he said to Emily, starting with the supplementary payment in the context. She continued. 31 minutes after they walked through Sims's door, the statement was complete and initialed on every page. Sims signed as witness and mediator. The activation language at the bottom of the original document was countersigned. The recording was time-stamped and backed up to 2 separate encrypted locations that Sims controlled. It was done. Emily sat back in her chair and realized her shoulders had been up around her ears for the last hour. She let them drop. The physical relief was so sudden it almost felt like falling. Then Jonathan's phone rang. Not a text, a call. He answered it, listened for 15 seconds, and said, "Thank you. Stay where you are." He hung up. He looked at Emily. "Thomas just left the bank," he said. "Ethan says he sat in the parking lot for 4 minutes, didn't go in, then he drove." A pause. He drove to his attorney's office, not the federal building, his private attorney. "He's standing down," Emily said slowly. "He's assessing," Jonathan said. "There's a difference." "Not much of one," Sims said from behind his desk. "Once this reaches the IG's office, and it will reach them within the hour, Thomas's window for any kind of legal maneuver closes significantly. He knows that. His attorney knows that. At that point, his options become very limited, and all of them are expensive." "He still has the contact inside the division," Emily said. "A contact who is now himself exposed," Sims said. "Once the IG has the billing records from tab 7, that contact, Buit, becomes a liability, not an asset. Thomas cannot use him without destroying him. And destroying him means losing the one protection he's had for 6 years. He folded his hands on the desk. "Thomas Hale is going to spend the next 72 hours deciding between bad options. That is exactly where we want him." Emily looked at the box on the desk, at the binder, at her father's letters, letter 19 still open on top. She thought about Thomas picking up her private correspondence in the library, that slow, deliberate way of setting it back down, the perfectly assembled smile. "You are very much your father's daughter." He said that like it was an insult, she said half to herself. "What?" Jonathan asked. "Thomas, when he met me, he said I was my father's daughter like it was a warning." She looked up. "He was afraid of my father. That's what that was. Not contempt, fear." She paused. "He spent 6 years trying to get those documents and he couldn't. A man who worked 2 jobs and lived in motels kept something out of Thomas Hale's reach for 6 years. That must have..." She stopped. "Humiliated him," Jonathan said quietly. "Yes," Emily said. "And now his niece's daughter finished it in 24 hours in borrowed clothes with a fever." The silence that followed was not comfortable or warm. It was the specific silence of people who have been through something together and are still inside the aftermath of it, not yet far enough of the way to know what it cost. Margaret's voice came back to Emily. "Your father said you'd get to mercantile trust within 48 hours. If you did, you were ready." She had made it in less than 24. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt hollowed out and strangely tender, like a bruise in the place where something used to be defended. Sims's desk phone rang. He answered it, listened, said yes twice, and hung up. He looked at Emily with the expression of a man delivering information he has been waiting to deliver for a very long time. "The IG's office received the preliminary filing 7 minutes ago," he said. "They've acknowledged receipt. The formal review begins at 9 a.m. tomorrow." A pause. Pause. It's in the system. It cannot be pulled back. Emily nodded once, slowly. And Margaret, and she asked? Her formal reappearance will be coordinated through my office over the next 48 hours, Sims said. She'll be protected through the process. He looked at Emily over his glasses. She asked me to tell you something. What? She said your father was right about you, and she said she's sorry it took this long. Emily looked at the desk for a moment. She breathed through it. Tell her we're even. Eyes, she said. She protected his work long enough for it to reach me. That's what mattered. Sims wrote it down. Actually wrote it down on a notepad in the manner of a man who understood that some things were too important to trust to memory. They left 20 minutes later. Ethan was parked 2 streets away. Emily got into the back seat, and Jonathan got in beside her, and for several blocks neither of them spoke. The city moved past the windows, and it looked the same as it always did. Indifferent, relentless, lit up against the dark, in the way of a place that doesn't care what happened to any individual inside it. She had walked through this city for years, and it had never cared about her. It still didn't. The difference was she had stopped needing it to. What do you do now? Jonathan asked. He said it carefully. Not what happens now. What do you do? The distinction was deliberate, and she felt it. I go back to work, she said. Emily. Not forever, she said. But tomorrow I have shifts I've missed, people who covered for me. I don't abandon responsibilities because my life got complicated. I've never done that. You won't be invisible anymore, he said. Once this moves through the system, your name will surface. People will know Daniel Carter had a daughter who I know, she said. It changes things. I know that too. She looked at him. You're asking if I'm afraid of it. I'm asking what you need, he said. That's different, Antoine. She considered him. This man who had rolled a car alongside her in the rain, who had locked a door and apologized for it, who had sat across from her in a library and said, I knew your father, and I'm ashamed of parts of what I built, without once trying to make himself the sympathetic figure in that sentence, who had stood near doorways and not interrupted and understood without being told which moments were hers to own. He was not without fault. He had told her that himself, and she believed it because he had told her without being asked. The list of things he had been complicit in was long, and some of it was in the binder on the seat between them. He would spend years reckoning with it. She was certain of that now. In the same way she had been certain of very few things in her life. But he was here. He had driven fast when she told him to. He had given her the camera out of the wall and put it in her hand instead of his own pocket. He had stood outside a bank room door while she listened to her dead father's voice and not once knocked. I need an independent lawyer, she said. My own, not yours and not Sims's. Someone I hire with money I earn. I'll find one, she said. I know how to find things. I've been finding things my whole life without help. She paused. What I could use is a few days to think, without cameras in the walls, without locked doors, without anyone in this situation deciding what's good for me before I get there myself. I have a property, Jonathan said. No staff, private. No one knows it's connected to me. It's under a name I haven't used in 10 years. You could, Jonathan. He stopped. I'm not going to another one of your properties, she said, not harshly, almost gently. I appreciate the instinct, but do you understand what I'm saying? He was quiet for a moment. Then yes, he said, I do. Good. Is there somewhere else, somewhere you'd feel? My mother's, Emily said. It surprised her when she said it. She hadn't planned to, but it came out of her the way true things come when you stop managing your own mouth. I haven't been home in 8 months. I've been avoiding it because, she stopped. Because being there reminded me of what we lost, and I was too busy surviving to afford the reminder. She looked out the window. I think I can afford it now. Jonathan said nothing, which was exactly the right thing. Ethan pulled up in front of the address Emily gave him without being asked. Because of course she had given it to him somewhere along the way, and of course he had remembered it because Ethan Cole remembered everything that might matter and said nothing that didn't need to be said, and she had trusted him completely since the moment he told her not to open the door for Mrs. Brooks and looked at her like he expected her to understand why. She picked up the box from the seat. She left the binder. Jonathan looked at the binder she'd left. That stays with you, she said. You know what to do with the documentation? The property transfer records, the pension records, the redevelopment contracts. You know which parts implicate people you know personally. You know which ones hurt. She looked at him steadily. Don't protect them, Jonathan. Not even the ones who'll ask you to. I know, he said. I know you know, she said. I'm saying it anyway because it's going to be harder in practice than it sounds right now. He held her gaze. It's already harder, he said. She believed him. She opened the car door. The morning air hit her still cold, still carrying the particular exhausted smell of a city after rain, and she stood up with the box under her arm, and she looked at the building in front of her. 3 floors, brick the window on the 2nd floor with the curtain she recognized from 20 years of coming and going, a light on behind it. Her mother was awake. Of course she was awake. Her mother had always been awake at the wrong hours, working or worrying, or both, the particular insomnia of a woman who had spent too many years listening for things that weren't coming back. Emily stood on the sidewalk for a moment. She heard the car behind her still idling. She did not turn around. Emily, Jonathan said from the open window. She turned. He was leaning slightly toward the window. His face in the early light looked different than it had in the library or the dim hallway of his estate. It looked like a man's face. Not a power face, not a managed face. Just a man who had spent a long time at a certain altitude looking down at the world and had recently in the last 24 hours started to understand what the view looked like from the ground. Your father was right, he said, that you'd be difficult to rescue. I told you, she said. I wasn't being rescued. I know. Something moved across his face. But for what it's worth, he stopped, started again. I'm glad the car matched your pace. She looked at him for one long moment. So am I, she said. She turned and walked to the door of her mother's building and pressed the buzzer with her thumb and waited. The intercom crackled. Her mother's voice came through it, sleep rough, immediately alert, the voice of a woman who knew her daughter's thumb on the buzzer from every other thumb in the world. Emily. Hi, Mom, Emily said. A pause. Just one beat. The kind of pause that was actually a whole rearrangement of feeling compressed into a second. I'll buzz you in, her mother said. I'll put the coffee on. The door clicked open. Emily walked through it. Behind her, the car pulled away. She did not watch it go. She already knew it would come back, not to collect her, not to bring her back into that world, but in the slower, more complicated way that things return when 2 people have been through something that changes the shape of what ordinary means. It would come back differently. So would she. She climbed the stairs with her father's letters under her arm and 23 years of a particular kind of grief settling into a different position in her chest, not lighter, not resolved, but reorganized. Moved from the place where it had been blocking everything into a place where it could be carried without shutting everything else out. She reached her mother's door. It opened before she knocked. Her mother was standing in the doorway in her robe older than Emily held her in her head. Smaller, the back injury visible in the slight list of her posture, her face doing the thing it did when it was trying not to do anything, trying not to show relief or anger, or the particular grief of a mother who has watched her daughter survive things she should have been spared. They stood there for 1 second. Then her mother said, "You look terrible." "I know," Emily said. "Are you in trouble?" "Not anymore." Her mother looked at the box, at Emily's face, at the box again. "Come inside," she said. "Tell me everything." Emily stepped through the door. She set the bar on the kitchen table, the same table that had held cereal boxes and overdue notices and permission slips, and all the ordinary wreckage of a life being held together by one tired woman's determination. She sat down in the same chair she had sat in since she was 8 years old, and her mother poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from her and folded her hands on the table and waited with the particular patience of a woman who had learned to wait for things that were always worth waiting for. His name was Daniel Carter, Emily said. Her mother went completely still. He loved us, Emily said, in the broken, insufficient, genuinely disastrous way that he was capable of, and he left something behind. She put her hand on the box. "I think it's time you knew what it was." Her mother looked at the box for a long moment. Her eyes were very bright. She said nothing. Emily opened it, and outside the city carried on in all its indifferent, relentless rain-washed noise, and inside that kitchen, at that table under that light, 2 women sat down with the truth that had been kept from them for 23 years, and they did not look away from a single word of it. That was how it ended. Not with power restored or money redistributed or justice delivered in the clean and cinematic way that stories sometimes promise. Those things were coming slowly and perfectly through the grinding institutional process that Sims and Margaret in a federal oversight office would manage over the next 18 months. Jonathan Hale would step away from half the empire his family built and spend several years doing something uncomfortable and necessary. Thomas Hale would settle under terms that were not lenient in a closed proceeding that nonetheless put specific names on specific harms. 47 families would be heard, but that was later. That was the machinery turning. This was now. This was the kitchen. This was Emily Carter's, who had walked through 14 years of reign that nobody noticed, sitting across from her mother at a table that had held everything and now held this, her father's handwriting, her father's regret, her father's love in its broken and imperfect form. She was not the same woman who got into the car. She was not lost. She was not invisible. She was not waiting for anyone to notice she was still standing. She was simply here at the beginning of the only kind of life that had ever actually been available to her, the one she built herself from the truth with her own hands. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.